Hey everyone, welcome to the live reading of Psycho-Cybernetics. My name is Alyssa, and we are picking up our reading with the Master Intentions of a Mastermind Book Club. We are picking up on Chapter 11. So, Chapter 11 is how to unlock your real personality. Woo! Excuse me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope you guys have an amazing day today. So it says, personality, that magnetic and mysterious something that is easy to recognize but difficult to define, is not so much something that is acquired from without as something that is released from within. What we call personality is the outward evidence of that unique and individual creative self, made in the image of God. That spark of divinity within us, or what might be called the free and full expression of your real self. This real self within every person is attractive. It is magnetic. It does have a powerful impact and influence upon other people. We have the feeling that we are in touch with something real and basic, and it does something to us. On the other hand, a phony is unreversibly disliked and detested. Why does everyone love a baby? Certainly not for what the baby can do, or what he knows, or what he has, but simply because of what he is. Every infant has personality plus. There is no superficiality, no phonies, no hypocrisy. In his own language, which consists of either crying or cooing, the baby expresses his real feelings. He says what he means. There is no guile. The baby is certainly honest. He exemplifies the nth degree the psychological dictum. Be yourself. He has no qualms about expressing himself. He is not in the least inhibited. Everyone has personality locked up within them. Every human being has the mysterious something we call personality. When we say that a person has a good personality, what we really mean is that he has freed and released the creative potential within him and is about to express his real self. Poor personality and inhibited personality are one and the same. The person with poor personality does not express the creative self within. He has it restrained, cuffed it, handcuffed it, locked it up, and thrown away the key. The word inhibit literally means to stop, prevent, prohibit, restrain. The inhibited personality has imposed restraint upon the expression of the real self. For one reason or another, he is afraid to express himself, afraid to be himself, and has locked up his real self within an inner prison. The symptoms of inhibition are many and varied: shyness, timidity, self-consciousness, hostility, feelings of excessive guilt, insomnia, nervousness, irritability, inability to get along with others. Frustration is characteristic of practically every area and activity of the inhibited personality. His real and basic frustration is his failure to be himself, and his failure to adequately express himself. But this basic frustration is likely to color and overflow into all he does. Excessive negative feedback is the key to inhibition. The science of cybernetics gives us a new insight into the inhibited personality and shows us the way towards this inhibition, freedom, and how to release our spirits from self-imposed prisons. Negative feedback in a servo mechanism is equivalent to criticism. Negative feedback says, in effect, you are wrong, you are off course, you need to take corrective action to get back on the beam. The purpose of negative feedback, however, is to modify response and change the course of forward action, not to stop it altogether. If negative feedback is working properly, a missile or a torpedo reacts to criticism just enough to correct course and keeps going forward toward the target. This course will be, and as we have previously explained, a series of zigzags. However, if the mechanism is too sensitive to negative feedback, the servo mechanism overcorrects. Instead of progressing towards the target, it will perform exaggerated literal zigzags or stop all forward progress altogether. Your own built-in servo mechanism works in the same way. We must have negative feedback in order to operate purposely, in order to steer our way or be guided to a goal. Excessive negative feedback equals inhibition. Negative feedback always says, in effect, stop what you're doing or the way you're doing it and do something else. Its purpose is to modify response or change the degree of forward action, not to stop all action. Negative feedback does not say stop, period. It says what you are doing is wrong, but it does not say it is wrong to do anything. Yet, where negative feedback is excessive, or where our own mechanism is too sensitive to negative feedback, the result is not modification of response, but total inhibition of response. Inhibition and excessive negative feedback are one and the same. When we overreact to negative feedback or criticism, we are likely to conclude that not only is our present course slightly off beam or wrong, but that it is wrong for us to even want to go forward. A woodsman or a hunter often guides himself back to his automobile by picking out some prominent landmark near his car, such as an extra tall tree which can be seen for miles. When he is ready to return to his car, he looks for his tree or target and starts walking towards it. From time to time, the tree may be lost from his view, but as soon as he is able to, he checks his course by comparing his direction with the location of the tree. If he finds that his present course is taking him 15 degrees to the left of the tree, he must recognize that what he is doing is wrong. He must immediately correct his course and again walks directly towards the tree. He does not, however, conclude that it is wrong for him to walk. Yet many of us are guilty of just so foolish a conclusion. When it comes to our attention that our manner of expression is off course, missing the mark, or wrong, we conclude that self-expression itself is wrong, or that success for us, reaching our particular tree, is wrong. Keep in mind that excessive negative feedback has the effect of interfering with or stopping completely the appropriate response. Stuttering is a symptom of inhibition. Stuttering offers a good illustration of how excessive negative feedback brings on inhibition and interferes with appropriate response. While most of us are not consciously aware of the fact, when we talk, we receive negative feedback data through our ears by listening to or monitoring our own voice. This is the reason that totally deaf individuals seldom speak well. They have no way of knowing whether their voice is coming out as a shriek or a scream or an unintelligible mumble. This is also the reason that persons born deaf do not learn to talk at all, except with special tutoring. If you sing, perhaps, you have been surprised to find that you could not sing on key or in harmony with others while suffering temporary deafness or particular deafness because of a cold. Thus, negative feedback itself is no bar or handicap to speech. On the contrary, it enables us to speak and speak correctly. Voice teachers advise that we record our own voices on a tape recorder and listen back to them as a method of improving tone, enunciation, and etc. By doing this, we become aware of errors in speech that we had not noticed before. We are able to see clearly what it is we are doing wrong, and we can make correction. However, if negative feedback is to be effective in helping us to talk better, it should, number one, be more or less automatic or subconscious. Number two, it should occur spontaneously or while we're talking. And number three, response to feedback should not be so sensitive as to result in inhibition. If we are consciously overcritical of our speech, or if we are too careful in trying to avoid errors in advance, rather than reacting spontaneously, stuttering is likely to result. If the stutterer's excessive feedback can be toned down, or it can be made spontaneous rather than anticipatory, improvement in speech will be immediate. Conscious self-criticism makes you do worse. This has been proved by Dr. E. Colin Cherry of London, England, writing in the British Journal of Nature. Dr. Cherry stated his belief that stuttering was caused by excessive monitoring. To test his theory, he equipped 25 severe stutterers with earphones through which a loud tone drowned out the sound of their own voices. When asked to read aloud from a prepared text under these conditions, which eliminated self-criticism, the improvement was remarkable. Another group of severe stutterers was trained in shadow talk, to follow as closely as possible and attempt to talk with a person reading from a text or a voice on a radio or TV. After brief practice, the stutterers learned to shadow talk easily, and most of them were able to speak normally and correctly under those conditions, which obviated advanced criticism and literally forced them to speak spontaneously or to synchronize speaking and correcting. Additional practice in shadow talk enabled the stutterers to learn how to speak correctly at all times. When excessive negative feedback or self-criticism was eliminated, inhibition disappeared and performance improved. When there was no time for worry or too much carefulness in advance, expression immediately improved. This gives us a valuable clue as to how we may disinhibit or release a lock-up personality and improve performance in other areas. Excessive carefulness leads to inhibition and anxiety. Have you ever tried to thread a needle? If so, and if you are inexperienced at it, you may have noticed that you can hold the thread steadily as a rock until you approach the eye of the needle and attempt to insert it into the very small opening. Each time you try to place the thread through the small opening, your hand unaccountably shook and the thread missed the mark. Attempting to pour liquid into the mouth of a very small neck bottle often results in the same kind of behavior. You can hold your hand perfectly steady until you try to accomplish your purpose. Then, for some strange reason, you quiver and shake. In medicated circles, we call this purpose tremor. It occurs as above. In normal people, when they try too hard or are too careful not to make an error in accomplishing some purpose. In certain pathological conditions, such as injury to certain areas of the brain, this purpose tremor can become very pronounced. A patient, for example, may be able to hold his hand steady as long as he is not trying to accomplish anything, but lead him to try to insert his door key into the lock in front of his door, and his hand may zigzag back and forth as much as 6 to 10 inches. He may be able to hold the pen steady enough until he attempts to sign his name. Then when his hand tremors uncontrollably. If he is ashamed of this, and he becomes even more careful not to make an error in the presence of strangers, he may not be able to sign his name at all. These people can be helped, and often remarkably, by training and in relaxation techniques, where they learn to relax from excessive effort and purposing, and not to be overly careful in trying to avoid errors or failures. Excessive carefulness or being too anxious not to make an error is a form of excessive negative feedback, as in the case of the stutterer, who attempts to anticipate possible errors and be overly careful not to make them. The result is inhibition and deterioration of performance. Excessive carefulness and anxiety are close kin. Both have to do with too much concern for possible failure, or doing the wrong thing, and making too much of a conscious effort to do right. I did not like these cold, precise, perfect people who, in order not to speak wrong, never speak at all, and in order not to do wrong, never do anything, said Henry Ward Beecher. William James advised students and teachers. Who are the scholars who get rattled in recitation room? Asked the sage. Those who think of the possibilities of failure and feel the great importance of the act. James continues, who are those who will recite well? Often those who are most indifferent. Their ideas reel themselves out of their memories of their own accord. Why do we hear the complaint so often that the social life in New England is either less rich and expressive or more fatiguing than it is in some other parts of the world? To what is the fact, if fact it be, due unless to the overreactive conscience of the people, afraid of either saying something too trivial and obvious, or something insincere, or something unworthy of one's interculator, or something in some way or other not adequate into the occasion? How can conversation possibly steer itself through such a sea of responsibility and inhibitions such as this? On the other hand, conversation does flourish, and society is refreshing, and neither dull on the one hand, nor exhausting from its effort on the other. Wherever people forget their scruples, and take the brakes off their hearts, and let their tongues wag as automatically and irresponsibly as they will. They talk much in pedagogic circles today about the duty of the teacher to prepare for every lesson in advance. To some extent, this is useful, but we Yankees are assertively not those to whom such a general doctrine should be preached. We are only too careful as it is. The advice I should give to most teachers would be in the words of of one who is himself an admirable teacher. Prepare yourself in the subject so that it shall always be on tap. Then in the classroom, trust your spontaneity and fling away all further care. My advice to students, especially to girl students, would be somewhat similar. Just as a bicycle chain may be too tight, so may one's carefulness and conscientiousness be so tense as to hinder the running of one's mind. Take, for example, periods when there are many successive days of examination impending. 1 ounce of good nervous tone in an examination is worth many pounds of anxious study for it in advance. If you want really to do your best in examination, fling away the book of the day before. Say to yourself, I won't waste another minute on this miserable thing, and I don't care an iota whether I succeed or not. Say this sincerely and feel it, and go out and play, or go to bed and sleep, and I am sure the results next day will encourage you to use the method permanently. Alright, I'm going to stop here today so we could talk about today's reading with the Intentions of a Mastermind member. How are you ladies feeling about today's chapter?
Peace, family. How y'all feeling today?
Doing great. How are you ladies feeling?
Grand Rising,
Amazing.
feeling good.
Good to know, everyone. I wanted to definitely talk about the power of the mind and the power of the words, just everything that this book is saying in terms of creating your personality and having confidence in yourself. Have you guys ever experienced like any issues with your speech and expressing yourself, like in your personal lives?
Yeah, really, when I was a child, for the most part, I would speak super fast, like so fast. And my mom used to always be like, "You have to slow down and enunciate your words." And I just be like, "What?" Because I'm just saying it as fast as I'm thinking it. But I think that I think that whole example about the stuttering was fascinating. Um,
I agree.
yeah.
I personally never had any speech issues. What about you, Dominique?
Yes, with me, like when he said some just didn't say anything at all, I was that type. I just was quiet, and then I'll go back. I'll be in my head like, well, I could have said this or I could have done that, but I just be quiet because I just be like having a hard time with expressing myself, and then I'll go back and talk with my sister, and I'll be like, well, I couldn't. She used to be like, well, why you ain't say that, or well, why you ain't express? And I'm like, you're right, but and then I just used to just get so speechless. So that helped me know like it's okay to just and not be so much in your head too. I always overthought and just was like, I'll just be quiet instead of just, because I didn't like conflict and all that. So that I think that's why I just used to not express myself instead of just like speaking your mind and knowing it's okay. Like, we all have opinions. It's okay.
Yes, I agree. I would say though, I definitely had self-confidence issues when it came to my pronunciation with certain words. I will always be the kid when asked to read aloud. Like I would spend my time trying to sound out every single word, and I feel like it's made me a better person because I actually tried. but I can definitely remember times where if I would say something wrong or it would come out sounding weird, I would, crack jokes on myself and say, oh, I'm dyslexic. Meanwhile, I've never been diagnosed in my life. But just that whole thing, and it reminded me when he was talking about the stuttering as well, because sometimes that would happen to me. I would stutter, trying to be so focused on pronouncing things correctly and making sure that what I'm saying is proper. But it was very, very how would I say it? Like very minimal. It wasn't never an actual problem that I was like diagnosed with stuttering. It was just more, I think, when I was in certain rooms with certain people, you want your self-image and the way you're trying to be perceived to others to come off a very specific way. And sometimes if you're overthinking, I'm supposed to be different, right? That overcorrection, or I'm supposed to be different from who I am right now, and I want to achieve this, thinking that's the perfect self-image. You create more problems in your self-image than actually hitting the target on what you're trying to accomplish. But how are you guys feeling about this chapter or what we've read so far?
Yeah, absolutely. What you just said with that whole ending part that we just read of the chapter made me think about like just perfectionism and how the word perfectionism, it has the word perfect in it. So it might seem like, oh, I strive for perfectionism, quote unquote. That's a good thing. But it actually is a thing that holds us back, because when we be in a perfectionist mindset, that's when the excessive overcorrection happens, the excessive monitoring to the point where we don't do or say anything because we're just waiting for that perfect, whatever that is in our minds, moment to, that perfect mix of ingredients to say what we desire to say or do what we want to do or execute that thing. And I have been learning a lot about that over the past several years, because I used to feel like, and similar to Dominique and similar also to what you said, Alyssa, about like depending on who's around, because that does make such a difference, right? How you would feel more free to say or do things in certain circles versus another. But there is the perfect time doesn't necessarily mean when you feel the most comfortable. And that's what I'm learning, that sometimes there is no such thing as a perfect time, but there is an aligned time. And sometimes the aligned timing of things doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be the most comfortable in the situation, but it is necessary for the time.
Right, I agree. And it was interesting also how he connected it to this feeling of anxiety. And I feel like nowadays there's so many people who deal with those symptoms of anxiety, and that it's actually an issue in their life and they're unable to accomplish things. And I feel like personally it's so prominent now because we are constantly given various images of what perfection is, right? And what we should be striving for and what success is. But there's an old saying that goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think that standing for something, it really would just determine to know what it is you're striving for, what is your goal, what is your target. And when we don't know those things, or we have a skewed image of what that is and what it's supposed to look like, that's when we have these anxious feelings and this overcorrection issue and this inability to just be yourself. So, do you ladies want to add anything else before we close out today?
Well, I was just thinking about how quote unquote normal it is to feel that way. Like, not saying that it's natural or the best for us to feel that way, but just commenting on how the modern society makes it seem like that's normal to do, that it's the most accepted way to be is to strive for the same definitions of success that everyone else has defined as being right. And a lot of times that isn't right for everyone on an individual level, but if we're all striving to that and then find it hard to meet those targets, it can cause those symptoms of anxiety to come up, because we try to fit ourselves in a mold that wasn't designed for us. But I just think that whole concept is reflected in normal society every day. And it takes a certain level of awareness to become clear on what really is for us and what isn't for us.
I definitely agree, doing the work. And it's interesting how this book is titled, this chapter is titled, How to Unlock Your Real Personality. So I'm definitely interested as to what the author has to share about for the rest of the chapter, and just inspiring people to be themselves, to be yourself and understand who yourself is, learn yourself, and how to share that with the world. So thank you guys for being here today. Do you want to add anything else today, Dominique?
Yes, I love the way you ladies put, how y'all put all that, because it really falls down to, it's like, just don't be so much in your head or trying to be so, cautious or, hard on yourself. Like, I love the way he puts it's like just be free, just be happy. I just love it. It's like, don't overthink it. Just live. Just let it happen.
Honestly, just keep it flowing, keep it going. And you're always taken care of, nothing can go wrong if you believe that. So
yes.
Thank you, ladies, for being here. Thank you to everyone watching. And I hope you guys have a phenomenal day. And I'll talk to you guys next time.
Thank you.
Ladies. Have a good one.